Number 10. Killed his lover's brother. I mean, granted, his lover Clara Creed's brother Saul did set him up to be recaptured by Mr. Sinister. And yes, I did say Creed. This was established in the comic Origins number 2. It was here that we learned that Clara, Victor Creed's sister, was once the lover of Wolverine. Saul became jealous of Wolverine's close relationship with his sister, and so he decided to sell him out to Sinister. Well, him and her. Clara was seemingly killed by Essex, but recovered due to her healing factor, and Wolverine later realized the truth, that Saul was the one who had sold them out. In a fit of rage, he drowned Saul Creed in a vat of liquid in Sinister's lair. The same liquid that Essex planned to use on Logan to wipe his mind clean. Despite the fact that Saul was not really a great person, Wolverine still did not need to kill him here, and continued to drown him even as Clara begged Logan to stop hurting her brother. Wolverine killing Saul was also what would be explained as the reason why Sabretooth visits him every year on his birthday to torment him and fight him. That was what Victor used to do apparently to his little brother Saul every year. Because Victor could no longer punish Saul, he instead decided to punish the man who took his little brother away from him. It's like a weird, I loved my brother because I loved beating him up. Number 9. Didn't lift a finger to save a kid. Later on, when a very young prisoner of war was about to be shot upon his release by the rebel faction that Wolverine was working with, Logan did not do anything to stop it. Granted, he did figure that Eric, who had agreed to take care of that prisoner, Jamie, would do the right thing. Jamie was seemingly freed by his captors, but this was all to give him one last moment of joy before they took his life. They were like, yeah, you can go free, and then they're like, now we'll shoot him. Fortunately, while Eric took on the burden of killing Jamie, he actually did this so that he would be sure that the boy would truly go free, pretending to have missed the shot, allowing young Jamie to escape. Eric, by the way, is also the well-known author George Orwell, which is his pen name. This is a gloriously weird story that this point comes from, as evident by the fact that, yeah, George Orwell is in the story. This act, or lack thereof, comes to us from issue 36 of the 1988 Wolverine series. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about Wolverine, I love talking about Wolverine, so be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. More mutant lists. Blah! Number 8. Killed a newly powered mutant. The newly powered mutant in question doesn't even have a name and is a high school kid. This of course all went down in the Ultimate Universe, which is a much harsher and gritty world by comparison to the Earth of 616. Still, Wolverine kills the kid who had just learned he is a mutant because it had been deemed that that kid is too dangerous. His powers allow him to basically vaporize people in his vicinity, and you get to see it happen in this issue as well, and I will say it's pretty brutal. It's like he burns people sort of from the inside out is what it looks like. Without meaning to, this kid vaporized all the people in his hometown, including his own family and his girlfriend. Rather than try to help this poor kid, it's decided the best thing for all of mutant kind, though maybe not this youngster himself, is for him to die. Wolverine is sent on a mission to deal with this new mutant. He talks to the kid and does his best to explain sort of what's going on and what's gonna happen. He isn't a cold-hearted killer after all, but he also still goes through with the mission without even seeming to question if it's the right thing to do. I mean, come on, Wolverine. It's just a kid. The two mutants go up to a cave in the evening and Wolverine gives him a beer and explains the whole situation, and in the morning, only Wolverine leaves the cave, implying the despicable deed has been done. Also, this kid never even got a name. Number 7. Kidnapped a nun. Now granted, Wolverine did this to actually try and help a recurring rival of his from back in Madripoor, Roughhouse. Roughhouse, you see, had been taken by the evil cyborg Geist, who had been around since World War II and had a history of working for villainous world leaders, including the Fuhrer. Geist had taken Roughhouse to use him for experimentation, as he was trying to use a very intense type of cocaine to turn Roughhouse into a hero for the nation of Terra Verde, and more specifically its militaristic and villainous ruler at the time, President Caradid. However, the cocaine had some alarming side effects, and that's why Wolverine kidnapped the nun. She was a healer known as Sister Salvation, who was actually once the wife of the president before seeing the sins of her lifestyle and her husband and renouncing her marriage and becoming a nun as a result. Sister Salvation was the only one who could calm Roughhouse's unbridled rage and heal his disfigurement, symptoms of the cocaine. It's actually even implied that Sister Salvation may have been a mutant this whole time. But anyways, so even though she had done nothing wrong, Wolverine took her with them by force, so that Sister Salvation could help keep Roughhouse in check. This all went down in issues 20 to 21 of the 1988 series of Wolverine. Also, I love this entire story, so you should go read it. Is good. Number 6. killed Hank Pym. Of course, he had a pretty good reason to do so, and this wasn't actually main continuity Hank Pym. This was a Hank Pym from a time when Wolverine had time traveled back to in order to prevent the creation of Ultron to begin with, killing Hank of Earth 26111 before he could bring Ultron into existence. Time travel. Unfortunately, although he had good intentions here, Wolverine actually made everything even worse by doing this, and while the disaster that was Ultron was avoided, worse ones quickly popped up in his place. Enter Morgan Le Fay's magics versus Tony Stark's science. This all went down in the Age of Ultron series, with Wolverine killing Hank in issue number 6, with the aftermath spilling out into the following issues. Also, this is just another reason to just be like, hey, don't do time travel. It usually doesn't work out. Just don't do it. If you're like, maybe I'll time travel to fix everything. No, I've read too many comics about this, I've seen too many movies, it's gonna be a bad idea overall. Except for maybe Back to the Future, although it goes wrong and then it usually goes right by the end. Comedies. Number 5. Killed his childhood sweetheart. Now granted, Wolverine didn't mean to kill Rose, it just kinda happened, but he still did it. Rose was Logan's childhood friend and sweetheart back when he was known as James Howlett. When James left his family home, which was tragically torn asunder, Rose went with him. Eventually, she was courted by a man who wanted to marry her, and she agreed, breaking young Wolvie's heart. Ouch. In the end, however, Logan was drawn back into a fight with his former friend / rival growing up, Dog. Dog had returned to kill Logan and seemingly also do harm to Rose, or take her with him, or some other terrible thing. The two got into a fight, and it came to the point where Logan was about to kill Dog. Not wanting Logan to be a murderer, Rose urged him to stop, heading towards him, and in the midst of a panicked crowd, tripping and stumbling as she rushed to his side and becoming impaled on his bone claws. How tragic. Even Logan was aware of how terrible this was. What's worse is it seemed like Rose the whole time actually had loved him. I mean, they were kind of pretending to be cousins at this point, so it was kind of a thing where they were like, maybe we both have feelings but we can't be together. Rose died and Logan lost his mind, turning feral under the weight of what he had done. This all went down in backstory series Wolverine: The Origin, with Rose's death happening in issue number 6. Number 4. Put moves on MJ. This one went down in the Ultimate Universe, but although it wasn't 616 Wolverine who was responsible, it was still a Wolverine. Just the Wolverine of Earth 1610 instead. In the Ultimate Universe, at one point, Wolverine and Spider-Man swap bodies. This all happens because, well, Jean is mad at Logan, which is maybe one of the most despicable things that Jean has done, making Wolverine swap bodies with someone that he hates, but I guess we'll save that for our Jean Grey version of this list. While their bodies are swapped, it turns out Wolverine got some alone time with Mary Jane while in Peter's body. We later learn, once the two heroes have swapped back, that Logan, in Peter's body, attempted to put the moves on MJ and even tried to sleep with the young lady, which is pretty despicable for like a long list of reasons. And I don't think I have to go into them, because I think you know what they are. Number 3. Trying to shame the Punisher. Which admittedly doesn't sound that despicable. Like on paper, trying to shame someone doesn't sound that bad. Until you understand the whole context in which Logan tried to shame Frank here. This really comes down to a sort of comic book writer feud, wherein Frank Thierry, longtime writer on the Wolverine series, decided to get back at Garth Ennis for his brutal rendition of the fight that happened between Wolverine and the Punisher in his own Punisher run. Ennis's fight happened in Punisher issue 17 back in the 2001 series. That fight really only started because Punisher made fun of Wolverine's height. Their team up there also started with them taking on a group of people with dwarfism, and then of course ends with Wolverine getting steamrolled by Frank, and I mean literally steamrolled with a steamroller. To get revenge though, Frank Thierry sank pretty low. At the end of his fight with the two heroes in issue 186 of Wolverine, he has Wolverine discover Punisher's bodybuilding mags, and basically makes fun of him for having them and trying to shame the Punisher because he believes that he's gay. That's pretty awful. Now granted, Wolverine in the present day is a proud parent of Akihiro, aka Daken, his openly bisexual son. So obviously I don't think this writing reflects the modern day character, but like, yeesh, is a pretty bad. It was a weird time, friends. Number 2. Drowned his own son in a puddle. Speaking of Akihiro, I mean exactly what I just said is really what happened here. Granted, like so many awful things that Wolverine has done on this list, this one also wasn't directly his fault. He and his son Daken, aka Akihiro, were manipulated by Sabretooth, which is what led to this moment. The most tragic element of this whole thing is that he knew what he was doing was wrong, and sadly just spend time reflecting on what his life could have been like with Daken if he had actually been able to grow up with his father around. They could have had a beautiful relationship instead of hating and wanting to kill one another. Wolverine thinks on this, imagining what their lives could have been like, all while drowning Daken in a puddle. If you want to see this heartbreaking horror show of this son versus dad battle, check out issue 34 of the first volume of Uncanny X-Force, which started in 2010. Also, I believe that's Rick Remender and Phil Noto, and you know I love Phil Noto, and also Remender's done some pretty cool stuff, so it's a good one, but a tragic one. Number 1, forgot about his kids, then killed them. Never mind. Wolverine just killing Akihiro, who admittedly in the past has also been pretty evil, so as awful as that was, there was still kind of an element to that where it almost felt fair. It was still sad, but you were like, I mean, he's kind of a bad guy. But Wolverine's fights against his children is not a saga that ends there. In fact, there was another time in the comics where Daken actually pitted his dad against his fellow half-siblings, all children of Wolverines that he either never knew about or had forgotten as a side effect of his healing powers and his super long lifespan. This team was brought together by Daken, and he called them the Mongrels. Or well, brought together by Daken, and the Red Right Hand at least called them the Mongrels. They came together to take on their father, with Daken training them for the fight. In the end, however, Wolverine defeated them, killing them all. Now this of course is a win-win scenario for Daken though, because either they killed Wolverine, his own father and enemy, or they ended up killed, which meant that Daken would also have a part in hurting his dad just by revealing the truth of the team members and how they were all his kids. Really though, the greater organization behind this whole plot was the Red Right Hand, who only wanted Wolverine to suffer as they had. They were united by the fact that they'd all lost family members to Logan, who had killed them at one point or another in his very long life, which is why they pit him against his own unknown children before taking their own lives. They were like, we don't even want you to die, we just want you to hurt people that you once loved or could have loved. You know how it is. And Wolverine doesn't even know, because he's like, I don't even know who these people are, and then later finds out and is like, oh gosh, oh boy, my life is terrible.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Captain America. Wolverine Origins began back in 2006. It ran for 50 issues, and it kicks off with Wolverine on a mountaintop with the Muramasa blade. Now he's had all these memories returned to him from the events of House of M, and now he wants a little payback on all those responsible for messing with his life. He took on Nuke in the Vietnam fields, and then in issue 4, Captain America joins the battle. They take turns bashing each other in, metal slashing around, they're just punching each other in the head. It's good fun. Cap gets the upper hand on Logan when he crushes the tendons in Wolverine's forearms, but a mighty kick to the hematoma lump on Steve's thigh buys Wolverine quite a bit of time to recover. Cap catches up and the fighting resumes, but Wolverine has the blade this time around, and an injured Captain America stands no chance. If it wasn't for the X-Men intervening at the last second, Cap would have lost a lot harder. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. You know it helps us out so much, and then in turn we can help you out and bring you that nerdy goodness. So hit that thumbs up, you guys are the best. Back to the list. Number 9, the Hulk. He's fought the green guy quite a few times, okay? And for this one, it's not really a fight per se. Savage Wolverine began back in March 2013 from Frank Cho. The series ran for 23 issues. Now when a S.H.I.E.L.D. geological department vessel with Shauna the She-Devil crashes onto the Forbidden Island, Wolverine wakes up now in Savage Land. His claws are immediately out, as they should be, and this comic wastes no time. A Velociraptor attacks him right away. What a rude awakening. He saves a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, takes off a head or two, and then heads back to the ship. Shauna the She-Devil greets him with joy and then fills him in. She was assisting a team of surveyors in mapping out the western part of the Savage Land when all their gear went dark, just like that. Some machine in the land's center was creating a dampening field, so now they're all stuck there. Shauna gets killed, but later on resurrected by the Neanderthals. Wolverine continues to find this machine, but he has no idea that she came back to life. But when Shauna meets up with Amadeus Cho in issue 3, some new info comes to light. That machine is also powering the jail cell for a powerful ancient alien in the mountain. And Wolverine is about to shut it down. How lovely. He takes on some giant gorillas, and when he gets close to the machine, the Hulk shows up. They're about to talk it out when one of those giant gorillas returns and then bites the Hulk. They fight it out a bit, and then Wolverine jumps in and quickly ends the action with one swift shink to the brain. That ought to do it. Number 8, Cyclops. The X-Men Schism storyline from writer Jason Aaron comes a 5-part story that begins with Wolverine acting as Cyclops' bodyguard at an international arms control conference in Switzerland. Mid-speech, Kid Omega returns, and he makes everybody start spilling all their horrible, deep dark secrets. Cyclops and Logan are immune to this because, you know, superpowers. Sentinels are soon deployed worldwide, and a new Black King of the Hellfire Club is elected, Cade Kilgore. Cade's first plan of attack is to surprise the X-Men at the opening of a mutant history museum, and then the world is chaos. The only mutant left standing is the young Ida Okonkwo. Wolverine tells her to run, but Cyclops argues for her to stay as she's the only one that could possibly save everybody there. Ida ends up taking out the Hellfire henchman, she saves the people, but Cyclops and Wolverine are arguing over if this was the right call to make. As the Sentinel approaches Utopia, Logan is imploring Scott to join the other kids and leave the island, because he plans to blow it to smithereens. They're not seeing eye to visor, so Scott makes it personal to get Logan's attention. He says, out of the blue, "She never loved you, by the way. You always frightened her." Harsh words. So Wolverine snaps back, suggesting that if Jean Grey was there at that moment, she would be more afraid of Cyclops. Scott responds by blasting Wolverine's face pretty much off. Wolverine, sans face at this point, still is on top of Scott, laying into him. I would say this is a tie at this point, but seeing how they look after the X-Men save them, Scott's in much worse condition. That's why you don't melt off Logan's face, man. It doesn't end well. The guy can heal. Just stop. Number 7, Quicksilver. After Quicksilver took the keys out of Cyclops' ride in Ultimate X-Men issue 3, you would think he had successfully thwarted the X-Men. All he has to do now was evade a hefty optic blast and hit the road. That was no problem seeing how he's the fastest man on the planet, but being the fastest doesn't mean you always have the upper hand. Sometimes you have to be the smartest. Wolverine was waiting for this moment to surprise Pietro. Logan just stood there with his claws out, he stood perfectly still, and Quicksilver ran right into him. When he asked Wolverine what he was doing here, Wolverine responded, wouldn't you like to know? And then he slashed him down to the ground. And then Quicksilver wasn't seen for quite a bit. Number 6, Silver Surfer. The first time we see zombie Wolverine was in Ultimate Fantastic Four issue 22. He got bit by zombie Hawkeye and Captain America, so his healing factor wasn't enough to save the day. Now when the Silver Surfer came poking around, everybody wanted a piece. Literally, they were so hungry, and this guy was like the holy grail of snacks. Hulk took the first bite, and soon after, Logan and the rest of the team dug in. They all then got cosmic powers and a full belly. Nice. Logan's idea of peeling back the candy coating and getting into the tender morsels inside surely helped put the plan into motion. Also, ew. Number 5, Iron Fist. In New Avengers issue 15, a friendly bout between Iron Fist and Wolverine is underway. No claws, no fist, no problem. It's a fun training exercise. It draws readers' attention and even other heroes in the issue as well. Wolverine is encouraging Iron Fist to tap out, but it's no use. Wolverine knocks him straight to the ground, saying he was only at a 6 this entire time. Out of breath, Iron Fist replies that he too was only at a 3, so Out of breath, Iron Fist replies unconfidently that he too was only at a 3. Okay. I don't want to be around either of these guys when they're at a 1. No thanks. Number 4, Age of Apocalypse, Cyclops. Doesn't matter which universe you're indulging in, odds are Wolverine and Cyclops will go at it at some point. In Age of Apocalypse, Earth 295, Cyclops was mad that Wolverine was trying to get his girlfriend. Classic bro stuff. Similar vibes to the Ultimate Universe, only this ends much worse for Scott. When Jean chose to be with Logan instead of Scott, and as if that wasn't already good enough for Wolverine, he decided to slash out one of Cyclops' eyes, truly leaving him a Cyclops. Nothing like having that reminder on your face. What a harsh way to get dumped. Number 3, Namor. Namor the Submariner, Volume 1, Issue 24, titled Green War, was written by John Byrne, and it features Namor returning to Earth to investigate a Hilrithri invasion, which was the sentient plant race. Now they got Wolverine and forced him to fight Namor. Even on page we're told Namor's strength is far greater than Wolverine's, but Logan has speed and therefore gets the upper hand. The fight was interrupted by the Sorcerer Master Khan, who took out the plant dudes and brought Wolverine back to normal. But if this had continued, Wolverine would have kept slashing and kept healing. No water guns would have helped you this time, Namor. Number 2, Ultimate Cyclops. Ultimate Wolverine gets pretty jealous, and he takes things to a new height, literally, when he discovers that Jean Grey truly loves Cyclops. So Logan, now there was a deep rift growing between the two of them. So Charles was like, hey, why don't the both of you just go to Savage Land, work your stuff out, have some bro time, maybe become best friends? I don't know. They did not work it out or become best friends at first. See, what initially happened was Wolverine let Cyclops fall to his death off a cliff just so he can get Jean back. That's like some Lion King teen drama stuff. That's wild. Cyclops survived and then exposed Wolverine to the crew and then made him feel horrible about what he'd done, even letting Logan stay on the team. What a weird punishment. So Wolverine ended up changing his ways and becoming a leader, eventually becoming a role model for the younger X-Men, being friends with Cyclops later on. All it took was letting him fall to his death first. That's it. And finally, number 1, Shang-Chi. We're all counting down the days to see the newest MCU hero hit the big screen. Shang-Chi was first introduced to readers back in 1973, Marvel Special Edition. Since then, he's earned himself a spot on the Avengers and of course has appeared in other comics from time to time, like in X-Men Volume 2, Issue 62, titled Games of Deceit and Death. The X-Men seek out the help of Shang-Chi to take down Sebastian Shaw, but in comic book fashion, a little scuffle was to be had first. Wolverine compliments the punk on his first blow, even telling him that the first blood is his. But when you throw down with Wolverine, you throw down with the best there is. Wolverine has him pinned down and he's ready to finish off Shang-Chi, but luckily Storm came in and just settled it. What an exciting way to meet the X-Men. Kicking off the list at number 10. Deadpool. The cancelled Deadpool 3 movie would have been pretty amazing over at Fox. We would have seen Logan and Wade on a road trip from hell. It would have been much better than the last time we saw them on screen together. Yeah. But in the comics, Deadpool and Logan have, of course, bumped heads, like in Cable and Deadpool issue 44, for example. The two are fighting at a Hydra base, and Wolverine straight up impales Wade to the wall. It's a fun comic. Wade spends the first half with his head off, just getting kicked around like a soccer ball. It's all fun and games. But finally, Logan keeps Wade still once he shoves his claws through him and into the wall. That ought to get your attention sometimes. Number 9, the Hulk. Going back to Volume 1 of The Incredible Hulk, issue 340, titled Vicious Circle, we find the Hulk and Rick Jones out in a blizzard. They're trying to drive, but it seems like they're only going in circles. Meanwhile, the Hulk is going nuts. He needed to get out of there. Like when you have to stretch your legs on a road trip, I get it, right? So he blasts the roof right off, and the X-Men just happen to be in the neighborhood flying by. The Hulk almost hits them mid-air after he jumps off. I would say good thing he didn't hit them, but he continued flying by and then hit a Pan Am passenger plane, so it's like, maybe he should have hit them then. So the X-Men were busy handling that, obviously, while on the ground, the Hulk landed and caused more damage. Wolverine tracked the beast down, and believe it or not, the Hulk almost snuck up on him. He couldn't catch the Hulk's scent, so it was really dangerously close. Wolverine popped his claws, turned, and then sliced the Hulk's arm, and they both looked at each other. And Wolverine, he walked away at this point. He retracted his claws. He's like, hey, remember who you are, Logan. Remember what you're doing. You're the bigger man here. And he's like, breathes, then he walks away, and then the Hulk jumps out at him and then starts it all over again. He thunderclaps Wolverine's ears to smithereens. His enhanced senses, this for sure, got the ball rolling, got him pretty upset. After this, naturally, there's mayhem. They take turns beating the crap out of each other until the fight was eventually at an end because it was broken up. But Wolverine for sure won this round. He tried walking away initially. He's the victim here, folks, don't forget that. Number 8, Spider-Man. In Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, released in 1987, we see Peter slinging across the city. He's trying to snap some pics for the Bugle. He's looking for his light, trying to get that angle right, but all of a sudden, trouble calls. He hears a young woman scream, so he zips down and he finds the owners of a grocery store dead on the spot. So he ends up following that lead, and it brings him right into Logan's path. Now Logan has already been doing his own plan at this point, and then in comes this kid wearing pajamas, shooting webs at people. So the two heroes now have no choice but to go loud and proud. They both fight off criminals together, and it's a fun time, but once they realize they're too late, Charlemagne had already gotten there. There's lots of bodies, so Logan naturally blames Spider-Man for ruining the whole thing. He's like, if it wasn't for you, this would not have happened in the first place. Pretty deep words. Spider-Man fires back though. He's not taking any of this. The two walk separate ways, but it's not over yet. Wolverine's meditating, he's feeling bad. Spider-Man's in bed, tossing and turning. He tries to take out Charlie himself, but Peter stops him. Well, he tries to. They fight in a graveyard for a few pages, but when Peter turns around to hit Wolverine one last time, he accidentally hits Charlie instead. I'm counting this as a loss because Peter wanted to fight. He engaged and he swung without looking, and now he can't get that image out of his head, and neither can we. Number 7, the X-Men. Okay, when I say the X-Men, I mean like all of them. Big yikes. Old Man Logan, one of the best storylines of all time, also one of the darkest. In a grim future where supervillains are taking over the planet, Mysterio pulls out perhaps one of his best tricks, if I do say so myself. If this happened in the MCU, kids would throw up gummy worms. They would be mortified. Mysterio tricks Logan into fighting the X-Men. He makes Logan believe that they're all supervillains, so Logan kills them all. He feels horrible, I mean obviously, so he runs off into the woods and he tries to take himself out. That's how bad he felt, but he vowed to never pull the claws out again after that didn't work. Even Santa Claus 2, starring Tim Allen, he's like, I can't do it. I made a vow, I can't do it. Number 6, Wolverine. Hey, question YouTube, if you fought yourself, who would win? In Logan, we got to witness Wolverine fight another Wolverine, but in the Age of Ultron comic, it was actually much darker, much more brain scratching at least. In Age of Ultron, in the comic, we get to see this dark future where the Avengers are getting whooped. Ultron is using Vision as a conduit from the future, like the world's most painful game of broken telephone. The Avengers don't really see a way to get to Ultron and stop him, so they send Sue Storm and Logan back in time to find a solution. Now Logan wants to just straight up kill Hank Pym, just to make sure Ultron is never created. But in doing so, this opens up a dark alternate future, so when they go back, this new timeline that they've now created made the Kree-Skrull War move to Earth. So they run into the defenders of that timeline and also Logan of that timeline. Wolverine versus Wolverine, what a time. The time traveling Wolverine beat alternate Wolverine, so everybody wins. Or loses. I'm not sure in this case. My head hurts, to be honest. Let's move on. Number 5, Teen Mutant. He doesn't have a name, so we'll just refer to him as Mr. Teen Mutant Boy, whatever you want to call him. He doesn't have a name because he's only around for one issue, spoiler alert, despite having an insane power. Let's talk about it. Ultimate X-Men issue 41. Now at first glance, he looks like a regular kid. He's got posters on his wall, one of which is Wolverine with the caption, "Be different," which is pretty amazing given how his day is about to go down. He wakes up, he's ready for school, he's looking for breakfast because he doesn't know how to make food. Apparently his mom is like the only one that can make him breakfast. So his mom's nowhere to be seen, so he doesn't eat. Only a pile of her clothes remain on the ground, and he's like, okay, so he goes to school. He doesn't call the police like a psychopath. If you ever see this, definitely call for help, absolutely. He continues on, he goes to school, but on the way there, he sees a collar on the ground on the sidewalk, but no animal. Again, more articles of clothing just strewn about. But then finally, he sees people. Okay, he's not going crazy. This is a good sign. We have real, like live people. Lovely. But I bet he wished that that wasn't the case. So he has this fantastic ability where if you're just near this guy, you don't survive to talk about it. He hears it from the guy in the poster himself, the Be Different guy, Wolverine. He finds him ducking out in a cave and breaks the news to him. What happened was when he hit puberty, he developed a specific mutation that radiates a series of toxins and acid-like poisons, and it basically wipes out any organic tissue. It turns it into vapor. So the amount of people that he ended up accidentally killing that day was in the 260s number, yeah. So he doesn't last for long because, well, Wolverine came out of that cave all alone. You do the math. Imagine your idol coming into a cave to kill you. It's not bad. I don't know. Could be worse. If Hugh Jackman killed me, I'd be like, okay. That's not bad. Number 4, Lobo. We've talked about comic crossovers quite a bit here on Top 10 Nerd. They're a blast, I mean, for the most part. DC versus Marvel showed us some pretty entertaining battles. I mean, we got to see Captain America versus Batman, Spider-Man versus Superboy, and of course, Lobo versus Wolverine. The third issue out of the 4, we find Logan bad-mouthing Lobo's favorite bar. Logan is talking smack and Lobo interrupts him with a nice chain to the chest. That ought to hurt. Wolverine ends up walking out of the bar smoking a cigar. Also, he's alive. How did this happen? We're not sure how this one ended up going down as most of this fight happened behind the bar, but to kill an immortal man, good on you, James. Number 3, Jean Grey. This next one played out in live action in everybody's favorite X-Men movie, X-Men The Last Stand. So good. It's not. Showed us Wolverine taking out Jean Grey in a mercy type way in order to stop the Dark Phoenix from causing mayhem. Now this of course went down in the comics as well, and it was much better on page than on screen. You can find it in New X-Men issue 148. Wolverine is telling Jean that Scott still loves her, although he's just maybe a bit confused at this moment. Jean is weak. She's saying she can't breathe, that she has this terrible feeling that she feels scared and weird, that there's voices inside of her head. She knows she's dying. It's a really sad part in the comics. And Wolverine can't take the pain on himself, but he can take the pain away for now. Hugh Jackman is a wonderful actor, don't get me wrong, so is Famke Janssen, but the comic is way harder than the movie. This whole scene here gets my throat that little like, I get a little tight throat feeling. So let's move on from really sad to really gross, shall we? Let's finish off like that. Number 2, the Hulk. Mark Millar's Old Man Logan. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Let's talk about it some more, it's good. It begins in volume 3 of Wolverine on issue 66 to be specific, and this is a future where supervillains have won. They did it! Good job, supervillains, nice. Hulk and She-Hulk had kids, the Hulklings, who, not nice, we don't want to talk about that. They would beat the crap out of you if you didn't pay rent, basically. Everybody had their own territory at this point, so Logan had to pay up. So Hulk Gang ended up taking out Logan's family because they were bored. They're also a little messed up in the head if you didn't already put that together. So Logan heads back and sees the Hulk, and he's like, you know what, no more games, no more talking, I'm here to get this done. Logan gets Banner right through the old chest plate, but we all know what happens next. He hulks out, and then he eats Logan. If you can't beat him, you gotta swallow him. That's the rule, right? Now you think this would be the end of it, but that's not what this list is. Now is it? No, you already know it's about to change. That's when Logan pops out from inside Banner, the old C-section from hell. So basically, if you eat Wolverine, just know that it's coming out one of any way he wants, essentially. And finally, coming in at number 1, everybody. What if Wolverine killed everybody, the entire Marvel Universe? Could he do it? Would he do it? Yes and yes. Written by Jimmy Robinson, released in 2006, this What If is based on Mark Millar's Enemy of the State series, taking place in Wolverine Volume 3 from issues 20 to 25. Now in that story, Wolverine is used to try and hunt down the Avengers, the X-Men, just everybody. The Hand and the Hydra were using him as a weapon. Baron von Strucker used him to steal documents from Reed Richards. It was the whole plan, right? It was a whole thing. But S.H.I.E.L.D. was able to capture him and heal him. In this What If, we see a world where Wolverine kept working for Hydra and the Hand. In this alternate timeline, everybody gets wiped out. Nick Fury is telling Cap and the others, I mean, sure, Hydra and the Hand is a concern, but like, we need to stop Wolverine first, like ASAP. That should be the first thing on our list right now. Thing is, Wolverine kills Spider-Man. He kills Iron Fist, he takes off Captain America's arm and leg, because whenever Wolverine is in trouble, Hydra just teleports him away. You can't really hit him. Susan Storm tried to make this force field trap that kept Logan in the same spot, with Magneto helping out as well, but while they were planning that, Wolverine snuck in and attacked them all through the floors, so everybody gets messed up there as well. Magneto and Sue Storm, gone and gone. Captain America gets claws in the head, also gone. So Kitty Pryde phases her hand into Logan's head and kills him that way. You gotta end the list on a horrible note, you know, because why not?
Number 10, drowning. We talked about Wolverine's battle with Tiger Shark on part 1 of this list, but later on in that same series, there's also a time when Wolverine/Patch seems to have been adrift in the ocean for quite some time and washes up later on shore alive. This almost implies that if you take Wolverine out of the water, he could potentially recover from drowning. So you could really only kill him by drowning if you kept him under there. Either that, or he managed to stay afloat long enough to keep his brain alive before passing out, getting tossed around some more, and then washing up on shore later. So perhaps he's only been passed out for a few minutes. It seems as though he has suffered some brain damage, at least from this underwater journey, as Logan also suffers from amnesia when he first wakes up. It takes a bullet to the head to loosen his memories and make him remember why he came there in the first place. Unfortunately, by then, it's a little too late. His plan was to warn the people of the village he arrived at, but by then they were already under attack. To read this whole story and the account of his drowning and washing up ashore, you need to check out the Lazarus Project story arc from the 1988 series. Near the end of issue 27 is where he dives into the water, and then we see him wash up without his memory in issue 28. Number 9, stabbed too fast. Technically, this killed Wolverine, but in the same issue in which he died, he was right back up and at him again, so I think we can still count it as a survival moment because he recovers. He did come back from it and ultimately he did survive. Also, this death is pretty ridiculous, which is also why I feel like it needs to be mentioned. In issue number 20 of the 2003 Wolverine series, during the Enemy of the State story arc, in the same issue in which he was introduced, Gorgon kills Wolverine by stabbing him real fast. He stabs so fast, Wolverine's healing factor can't even keep up. Okay. Wolverine dies, but in the same issue is resurrected and returns, now an agent of Hydra. And of course, welcome to Enemy of the State. An iconic story, but one with kind of a weird start. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Wolverine lists, boy oh boy do I want to give them to you. In fact, I think we could even do a part 3 of just ridiculous things that Wolverine has survived. So let us know you love it by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, attempted decapitation. There was a time when Wolverine was nearly decapitated by Conan the Barbarian himself, and still managed to keep on walking. His near decapitation broke a sword, and then of course was later covered by his hand on the back of his neck, for censorship reasons I imagine, so you can't quite see it, but it did happen. And this did happen in a what if, so it's considered alternate reality, I should mention, but I still think it's pretty impressive and wild that Wolverine tussled with Conan, got dealt the brunt of his decapitative force, and managed to survive it, and just get back up like it was nothing. Also, I feel like Conan would know when he's pretty much decapitated someone, because I feel like he probably does that a lot, so he literally was like, I gave him the whole decapitation swing, and I don't know, he's probably dead. Number 7, weaponized healing factor. When facing the Omegas in the 2010 Uncanny X-Force series in issue 26, Wolverine had his whole healing factor turn against him, being weaponized by Omega Red with Omega Blue and Omega Black in tow. The Omegas. Omega Red basically makes it so that Wolverine's immune system is working on overdrive, basically being tricked into thinking that his whole body is like a disease that needs to be fought off, so his immune system starts attacking all his organs, oh no! As a result, he becomes a giant mass of pus, decay, and inflammation. Wolverine's heart struggles against the internal attack, and in the end, his only solution to surviving is to cut himself open and basically let all the infectious bits that are there internally fall out of him. It's quite grotesque, but it does seem to work. And of course, he does survive. Just like him being like, I guess I gotta just cut myself open. I'm like, oh, okay. Alrighty then. Gross. Number 6, actual decapitation. In Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk, issue number 5, Wolverine ends up getting full-on decapitated by S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. This, of course, is in the Ultimate Universe, as it is an Ultimate comic. So it isn't 616 Wolverine, but it's still Wolverine. Wolverine of 1610, but still. Fury tells Wolverine that they are holding his body in an undisclosed location and reveals that they ran some experiments on Wolverine's head and body and have learned that his mutation seems to be more about survival than healing. How is he able to breathe without a body as a decapitated head? Apparently, his head has adapted to use his skin to breathe instead. So Ultimate Wolverine can actually survive decapitation and a slew of other things, just no problemo. He could survive almost anything in the Ultimate reality. Almost anything. Still dies in that reality, so you know. Number 5, escape velocity. We've seen Wolverine able to navigate the vacuum and coldness of space without proper equipment and survive pretty reasonably. But how about a hit so hard that it got him up to escape velocity, blasting him into orbit? Well, surprisingly, that wasn't much of a problem for Wolverine either. We see that happen in issue 108 of the first X-Men volume. Here he runs into a little fella named Jaff. But like Wolverine, just because he might be smaller in stature does not mean he is a pushover. Jaff punches Wolverine so hard he launches him up into space, but thanks to his healing factor, he manages to still survive that hard hit. And survive space. I mean, I think it's pretty cool that Wolverine can just survive space. That's nuts. Number 4, fall back from space. I like space, so I'm gonna talk about space some more. In Return of Wolverine issue number 5, Logan goes up against Persephone. Not wanting to be her puppet and not interested in the seeming fresh start she's offering him after bringing him back from the dead, he decides to escape their conversation and finds out what her master plan is. When he learns it has to do with basically mind controlling potentially the whole planet, he decides to intervene. The last satellite to be removed that could allow Persephone to take control of up to a few million people at the time happens to be the station he is on. So he decides the best course of action is to also disable that, bringing it crashing down to Earth. Logan himself had just survived being hit with a poisonous gas and jumping out into the vacuum of space. And even after that, he still manages to survive re-entry on a crashing station that would get impossibly hot, like really hot in there. The station lands in the ocean with Logan literally on fire as he slams into it. As a charred and burnt crisp, he emerges from the water and is fortunately brought to shore by some very shocked but obviously helpful fishermen. Hopefully they did have beer for you, Wolverine. Number 3, launched into the sun. During the dawn of X period of the current modern X-Men books, back in issue number 4 of House of X, Wolverine suffered what would appear to be a very permanent death in the fight against Orcus. A team was assembled to take out the mother mold that Orcus was building up in space, a massive mother mold before it could be completed and come online. Wolverine was the one to deal that final blow to it. Nightcrawler teleported him to outside the station where the mother mold was docked, sacrificing his own life in the process. It was then up to Logan, who slashed through the dock, freeing the mother mold from the station so that he could launch it into the sun, and of course him with it. In current X times though, we have resurrection protocols on our side. Yay, resurrection protocols, which allow fallen mutants to be returned to Krakoa. So while Wolverine did die from this, he was soon returned via resurrection protocols back to life. And for those who are wondering, the returning of his adamantium bonded skeleton each time is actually all thanks to Proteus, which fortunately means it's probably a lot less painful than other adamantium bonding processes that Logan has had to suffer suffer through, because Proteus can just be like, I warp reality, now you have adamantium. Of course, he can only do that because that's how Wolverine was before, so he can't just like make adamantium, just to be clear. It's not an adamantium making machine, okay guys? Number 2, adamantium bonding process. On part 1 of this list, we talked about when Wolverine has had the adamantium ripped from his body, and namely his skeleton. But how about just getting the adamantium in the first place? The adamantium bonding process is notoriously dangerous, and there are many test subjects who have come before and after Logan who simply did not survive it. Now, consider that Wolverine hasn't just had the adamantium bonded to his skeleton one time, but actually has had it bonded to him multiple times in his life. Considering how painful and deadly this process is, it's pretty amazing that Wolverine was able to survive this, even with his healing factor, and that he has been through it more than once in his lifetime. He's also gone through the adamantium bonding process before without even emerging with it bonded to him, rejecting said adamantium. That's multiple big ouches, bub. I can't imagine going through it and then just not even having adamantium at the end of that. That would suck. Number 1, burned up by the sun. Yep, the sun death has happened more than once, but the sun is pretty ultimate, so I felt like I had to talk about it again. I mean, it is a very permanent way to kill Wolverine when you think about it. In New X-Men issue 148, Wolverine has a moment where he's finally ready to say goodbye to everything. He prepares to throw himself into the sun with Jean Grey's body in tow. This is after Jean and Wolverine cannot find a way out of the trap that they've fallen into and are basically about to be launched into the sun. They do their best to find a way out of this predicament, but unfortunately, they can't seem to escape, and it's just getting hotter and hotter in there. When they both seem resigned to their fate, Logan decides to try and make the experience less painful for Jean by running her through with his claws, because that's what Wolverine does. Then, holding her body, he greets the sun as they arrive at their final destination. However, in issue 150 of New X-Men, it's revealed that Wolverine and Jean actually survived this, because the Phoenix consciousness was awoken by Jean's death. She actually needed to die in order to tap into the Phoenix Force and resurrect, rising from the ashes quite literally. She was able to res Logan again and create and pilot a ship construct in order to bring them back to Earth. So he even survived walking into the sun. That's bananas. Gotta love all those reses just saving your butt. Number 10, experimented on in Ravencroft. At one point, Sabretooth managed to capture Wolverine and handed him over to Nathaniel Essex, aka Mr. Sinister, who tormented him and also used him for experimentation. Wolverine would get out of this one by earning the sympathy of a fellow doctor who it turns out was actually a werewolf. She would help Wolverine to get free, but ultimately end up being caught by Victor Creed and Dr. Essex herself, who would then take her in Logan's place to experiment on. Poor doctor. Logan's time at Ravencroft was so bad that Victor was actually fine with not tormenting Wolverine himself, instead being content with the terrible experiments that Essex had dreamed up for Logan, believing that what he was doing was even worse than anything Victor himself could come up with. You can check out this horror story in the pages of Runes of Ravencroft, Sabretooth. Number 9, torn in half. It's important to note that Wolverine made his first appearance in a Hulk comic. As such, it shouldn't be surprising that these two have duked it out on more than one occasion, with Wolverine's healing factor generally being put to the test against Hulk's immense strength. In the Ultimate Universe, Wolverine isn't actually believed to have a healing factor either. More, his powers are believed to be tied to increased chances of survival and kinda evolution. In other words, it's believed that his body actually adapts to the duress it is currently under, and finds a way to just, make things work till he can recover. In the case of Ultimate Hulk vs. Wolverine, where Wolverine was torn in half in that first issue by the Ultimate version of the Hulk, in the first 2 pages in fact, Ultimate Wolverine then was forced to crawl around, looking for the bottom half of his torso so that he could reattach it. Yeah, a lot more gross than what we might see in the pages of a 616 Wolverine vs. Hulk comic. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about more crazy stuff that Wolverine has survived, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, adamantium poisoning. What's pretty crazy is that Logan is actually battling this pretty much all the time. The adamantium that is bonded to his skeleton is actually slowly killing him, and the only thing that manages to keep him alive is his healing factor. In the Old Man Logan universe, his healing factor gets weaker with time, and eventually he begins to be poisoned to death by his own body. While he does ultimately die, it's pretty crazy to think about just how long he managed to live. And even when Old Man Logan seems to be dying in the Dead Man Logan series, he still finds a way to keep going through a lot of that with the Regenix drug. Of course, it turns out that the side effects of Regenix are also kinda lethal, and eventually Logan does run out of it, using up his last vial. So in the end, Old Man Logan just decides to give in and succumb to death. Still, he had a pretty insane run. Number 7. Devoured by the Hulk. The Old Man Logan universe is much darker than what we're used to, being set in a post-apocalyptic future where the villains actually all pretty much won against the heroes and then turned the world into kind of a wasteland. Logan is just trying to get by and no longer goes by Wolverine here. He manages to find some happiness though, settling down with a woman named Maureen and starting a family. Unfortunately, they happen to live on land that ends up in Hulk gang territory. You might think, wait, isn't Hulk a hero? Isn't this a good thing? Not here, he isn't a hero, and it definitely is not a good thing. The gamma radiation in his old age basically turns Bruce Banner insane. When Old Man Logan doesn't arrive early enough for the Hulk gang with the rent money that they believe his family owes them, they pretty much kill them all. Well, except for Logan, sadly. As a result, Logan seeks revenge on the Hulk. During their fight, Hulk eats Logan, but in the end, Logan wins, giving Hulk some really bad indigestion when he cuts his way out of his gut. Number 6. Shot in the head. I can give you at least 5 separate occasions where this has actually happened in the comics, but honestly, there are definitely many more than that, I am sure. At this point, there may have even been too many to count. I could probably make a top 10 list of just the times that this happened by itself. One of the times this happened though was when Wolverine had been possessed by the Muramasa blade, or the Ebony blade, while under the guise of Patch. He ended up capturing Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, which left Patch's friends to try and recover Jess and save Logan from this evil influence. Lindsay McCabe, Jessica Drew's and Patch's good friend at the time, was the one who ended up forced to shoot Patch in the head, and she seemed pretty confused when Patch managed to mysteriously recover, because she could have sworn that, she shot him in the head. Of course, we later learned that Patch wasn't really fooling anyone, trying to pretend that he wasn't Wolverine because, all the X-Men were supposed to be dead at that point. So either Lindsay didn't know this yet, or was simply playing dumb to help Logan feel more confident in his disguise. To watch Lindsay wrestle with whether or not to shoot, you can check out the first arc of the 1988 Wolverine series, with Lindsay taking said kill shot in issue number 3. And I know I wrote 89, but it's actually 88. I always get that confused. 89 is the mini-series, even though that's volume 1, but it's 89, so 88, but that's volume 2. It's a little confusing, is it not? Number 5. Drowning. While this might not sound that crazy on paper in regards to everything else on this list, for Wolverine it is. It's been heavily suggested throughout history that water is not really where Wolverine is in his element. This has to do with the fact that Wolverine is actually quite heavy with all that added adamantium weight. I believe before he said it's over like 100 pounds of extra weight. He also can't really fully heal from fully drowning. Eventually, it's believed that it would kill him. And he's come pretty close to death by being stuck underwater for prolonged periods of time, which is pretty crazy considering drowning his own son, Daken, in a puddle was the way that he defeated him when the two were forced to fight one another. One time, Wolverine seemingly drowned during an underwater fight with Tiger Shark, when his claws got stuck in a coral reef. Fortunately, we learned in issue 20 of the 1988 Wolverine series that he managed to escape, and only suffered from briefly being deaf after escaping the coral and returning to land. Wolverine has also fallen into oceans and washed up on foreign shores a few times and lived to tell that tale, or those tales, although there are times when that experience seems to mess with his memories as opposed to his hearing. In fact, I'm trying to think of another time that he's drowned and his hearing has been messed up, but I mean, that definitely makes sense if you're deep underwater, because that would mess your hearing up. How come that never comes up again? Does it come up again? I don't know. Let me know if it does. Let me know what issue I need to read where that comes up again, because that would be cool. Number 4. Steamrolled. fists. Instead of being rickrolled, he got steamrolled. During a team up with the Punisher gone wrong, Wolverine managed to survive a whole no-holds-barred fight with Frank Castle. Well, definitely no holds barred from Castle's side anyways. The Punisher shot Wolverine repeatedly with an Uzi, kneecapping him as well, and then for good measure, he also decided to just run him over with a steamroller, just to really make sure, Wolverine wouldn't be getting up anytime soon. The whole fight is brutal and really only starts because Punisher sees the opportunity to use Wolverine as a weapon, so he kinda pokes him in places where he knows he's gonna start to rage. Which, Wolverine loves when people do that. He loves when people annoy him so that he can go into a berserker rage and be used as a weapon. That's his favorite thing. The fight all went down during the days of the Marvel Knights in Punisher issue number 17 from his 2001 series, which of course was written by none other than Garreth Ennis. Because, come on, this whole fight, it definitely sounds like Ennis. Oh, poor Wolverine. Number 3, forced adamantium removal. One of the craziest moments possibly in all of Marvel Comics has to be when Wolverine had his adamantium forcefully removed from his body by Magneto. His adamantium isn't just like a jacket for his skeleton, by the way. It's literally fully bonded to Wolverine's skeleton and his body. And while Wolverine does have a healing factor, he still feels all the pain of his injuries. All the pain. The healing factor doesn't diminish any of that pain. So I cannot even imagine just how painful this whole experience would have been for Logan. The experience was actually so traumatic that it also seemed to turn Wolverine feral for a good amount of time in the comics, and he even seemed to lose his nose as a casualty. Well, either the loss of the adamantium was what made him feral and made him lose his nose, or the experience did, or some combination thereof. But either way, it was clearly very traumatic for him. Number 2, reduced to a skeleton. This all went down in Wolverine's tie-in issues for Civil War. In issue number 43 of the 2003 Wolverine series, Logan squares off with Nitro, the one responsible for killing almost all of the New Warriors as well as hundreds of civilians. Nitro's superpower makes him basically a living bomb, and it's this explosive power that he uses on Wolverine. The strength and heat of the explosion is so strong that it reduced Wolverine to just a skeleton, and yet within a few brief moments, I kid you not, Wolverine has almost completely regenerated and somehow healed, with flames still visible, licking at his back, and while he is still smoking from that explosion. That's bananas. Though of course this was the early 2000s, a time when Wolverine was pretty overpowered in the comics due to him being so crazy popular, so this was peak healing factor times. All he needs is a few pages and he's like, I'm better. I'm basically fully healed almost. Number 1, encased in liquid adamantium. Wolverine did actually die in the comics during the death of Wolverine's story. Sort of. But it ended up of course not being permanent, and eventually his corpse disappeared, and then once more Wolverine showed up again, back alive. However, this was a pretty good attempt at finally burying Wolverine from a writing standpoint. Or I guess less burying him, more turning his corpse into kind of a morbid Wolverine monument. During the Death of Wolverine arc, we saw Wolverine's healing factor begin to dissipate and fail him as Wolverine learned that there seemed to be someone who wanted him dead. In truth, it was the head of the Weapon X program who sought Wolverine to try and duplicate his healing factor. He was trying to, do more adamantium bonding. When he learns that Wolverine no longer has his healing factor, the two end up in a fight against one another. As the founder of Weapon X, Dr. Cornelius attempts to escape by activating the adamantium bonding process on 3 remaining test subjects. Wolverine puts a stop to the process by breaking open the containers. However, this results in him getting covered in molten liquid adamantium, which ultimately encases, hardens, and then suffocates Logan to death. But then of course, Wolverine is later resurrected, regains his healing factor, and ultimately he returns again. So that's how he's alive now. Yay.
Number 10. Domino. With all these crazy missions that superheroes go on, you gotta wonder just how they deal with some of the horrible situations that they've had to deal with. Maybe hooking up with each other is one of those ways to pass the time and get over things. Yeah, so Wolverine and Domino weren't together too often, but when they were assigned to the same X-Force team, their relationship grew pretty strong and they ended up working out a friends with benefits type deal. So yeah, after these crazy missions, they would unwind with each other. We can find this firsthand in X-Force Sex and Violence. I mean, of course, just read the title. And in this story, Domino gets involved with the Assassin's Guild and the Hand and needed a way to get her mind off the events. I mean, you could do that, or therapy, for sure. Different strokes for different folks. literally. And before we go on to number 9, if you guys want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up on the video because it helps out our channel so much. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Now let's keep going with this crazy list. Number 9, Amir. This next romance lasted about 10 issues, and it begins with Wolverine Volume 3, issue 48. She even says for Logan not to worry about their hookup because Atlanteans don't have the same hang-ons that humans do when it comes to physical intimacy. It can be just about the physical elements only. And it's funny because Wolverine is the timid one this time around. He's vulnerable. He even says that he's not worried. He just feels like he needs someone to talk to lately. So what started out as Amir and her team helping Wolverine with a mission turned into this relationship, with Wolverine really caring about her. Amir unfortunately didn't survive during a mission against the Scimitar organization. Number 8. Lynn's son. This next one happens in the 4-parter Wolverine Manifest Destiny. So when Wolverine was in Chinatown, San Francisco, he saved a woman named Lynn from the crime lord, the Black Dragon. She refers to him as her lover in issue 3. Now, what Wolverine doesn't realize is that by successfully taking out the Black Dragon, Logan now becomes that role. So naturally he refused, but by refusing, that upset Lynn. To quit would be dishonorable to everybody, so while he was leaving, she stabbed him in the eye with a spearhead, warning him not to return. So when the X-Men relocated to San Francisco, he took a trip down memory lane, but now Lynn is not the same. Lynn is dead, lover, she says. You killed her a long time ago. Then she goes on to explain that now she's the Black Dragon, Queen of the Triads, and Empress of the Chinatown underworld. Wolverine took over as the new Black Dragon, and Lynn escaped through the sewers holding that same spearhead. Number 7, the Pink Lady. Wolverine and Dupe, issue 1. We find the Pink Lady, this mysterious woman who Logan met during his time with Dupe. Now, Wolverine and Dupe were looking for this stolen artifact named the Pink Mink, which of course led them to the Pink Lady. At first, Dupe is all over her. She's laying on the pool table, they're having a moment, and Logan in the meantime is just hanging out at the bar. In issue 2, things start to escalate. So the Pink Lady is sitting with Dupe and Logan, and things are getting kind of flirty now. After a daring rescue, there's a few emotions in the air, and Logan tells Dupe to back off because he is clearly not her type. The Pink Lady even asks them to stop fighting over her, but sarcastically, you know? She's like, hey, knock it off. Quit it, you two. Logan ends up getting with the Pink Lady, and Dupe gets with the Pink Mink. Everybody wins. Number 6, Black Cat. Wolverine and Black Cat Claws was a 3-parter released in 2010. In it, we find the start of a romance with Felicia Hardy, Black Cat. When she first met with Wolverine, they were both kidnapped by Kraven the Hunter, and in order for him to hunt them down on his tropical island. Sounds like a great way to pass the time, sure. Now, at the start of this, Black Cat and Wolverine were really not a fan of each other. But after you go against Kraven and run around together, you're bound to bond in some way or another, especially when you're beating up bad guys together. So while it turned out that Kraven was actually a robot the whole time, the true villain all along this whole time was Arcade and his girlfriend, White Rabbit. So now they're taking down robots together, and in the 3rd part of the story, the cover alone suggests that the pair get pretty close. So Black Cat steals a helicopter, Wolverine almost gets eaten by a fish. It's wild. And then this is when Black Cat admits that Wolverine was growing on her. And then on cue, he hops out of the water. And then cuts to the two of them on a date a few days later where Black Cat reminds Wolverine that she can also smell pheromones. Number 5, Seraph. This one comes from Wolverine Origins Annual number 1. Her name was Seraph, and she was really something else. She had taught Logan how to kill, and he enjoyed killing people for her. Kind of the perfect pair, if you ask me. She was ruthless to most, but to him, she was gentle. Yeah, for a 1920s relationship, this one was pretty spicy. I mean, Logan carved trees for her. He was romantic. But there was more to her than Logan had thought. I mean, after all, he says, why would this woman that I loved so much lie to me? Then in Wolverine issue 126, he looks back and reflects on their relationship and how she was killed sadly by Sabretooth. Another love lost to time. Number 4, Gak. Sometimes you can find love in places you never thought you would. Like say for instance in Savage Land. When Wolverine got to Savage Land, he was alone. He was doing a solo adventure and then he encountered a tribe whose leader challenged him to a battle, trial by combat. The two battled it out and Logan came out on top with the tribe cheering along. Gak is defeated. But who is this Gak? When he goes to meet the leader, he's surprised that it is a woman. Who knew? They can fight too, Wolverine. They spent some time together and they eventually became lovers. So Gak became pretty protective over him as she fought off the other woman who got even close to him. Things took a turn once Wolverine started getting chased down by a dinosaur, and then he was promptly eaten. by said dinosaur. But of course he was revealed to be alive, and then Gak tried to find ways to keep him in the Savage Land after that. She's like, yay, you're back, but also, don't go anywhere. I'm gonna hide your plane. Yeah, she hid his plane from him. She wanted no way for this guy to get out. But eventually he had to return home by plane with a sad Gak watching. Hate to see you go, but love to watch you leave, Logan. Number 3, Squirrel Girl. Doreen Green. Alright, this one's pretty messed up. This has been speculated for a while now, and it comes down to a simple page of text. In New Avengers, issue 7, we see the two talking as if something had happened. Something rather intimate, that is. Cause see, Doreen is like, well, I hope we can agree to be professional, and Wolverine's like, why of course. Also, you look amazing. And she's like, hey, you look amazing too. So there's something there. This romance fling thing becomes more evident come Wolverine issue 8, when Emma Frost had entered Wolverine's mind and literally found a room called Sexual Fantasies. So Emma says, I know I'm gonna regret doing this, and maybe she was right. Upon opening the door, none other than Doreen Green is there herself, just hanging about. Number 2. Ultimate MJ. Ah, yes, the Ultimate Universe, home to the Scarlet Witch Quicksilver relationship, which still ended up making its way into this list. But there's also some MJ and Wolverine weirdness that happens as well. So after Ultimate Spider-Man issue 66, Wolverine and Spider-Man switched bodies. Yeah, I'm talking Freaky Friday style. This all happened after Mesmero switched their bodies. So Peter was like, okay, well, if you're me now, I really need you to go to school. We're like 15. This is important. This is the only thing you have to do. And also maybe fight a couple of bad guys. So while Wolverine was in Peter's body, he at one point ended up kissing MJ and even tried to sleep with her. Yeah, I guess all those walks to school with her made him realize how awesome she was. MJ told him she wants to wait until they're older for that kind of thing though to happen. Thank God she said that, honestly, or else I don't even want to know. I don't want to go down that road. And number 1. Charlemagne. This one was revealed in Spider-Man vs. Wolverine back in 1987. So back when Wolverine was a spy, he had gotten with an agent known as Charlemagne, and they were really close, like most of these are when they start. So after their time together, she went on to become a mercenary for the KGB, but when they finally reunited, she had gotten too deep into this trouble and wanted Wolverine to be the one to take her out rather than her get tortured. Brutal concept, just all bad. But good guy Spider-Man luckily wasn't gonna let that happen as long as he was there. So they fight it out a bit until one of Spider-Man's punches accidentally hits her instead of Logan. And then Wolverine holds her until she fades away. Wow, nothing like Spider-Man just punching one of your past lovers out of existence. So for that, this one easily takes number 1 because of how sad it is. MJ is weird and gross and creepy, but this is, you know.
Coming in at number 10, we have Wolverine's particularly powerful sense of smell. Wolverine has always been known for his more animalistic traits, given the whole Wolverine name, but did you know that Logan's sense of smell in particular is almost beyond compare? While all of Wolverine's senses are heightened to the degree that he's become an excellent tracker of prey over his many years as an X-Men, his sense of smell is so powerful that he was once able to deduce that Peter Parker was Spider-Man simply by randomly passing by him on a European vacation. In an even wilder example, the Ultimate Wolverine once had to track down the smell of his own legs after the Hulk had ripped him in two and threw his lower half 4 miles away from the site of their battle. Kind of a dick move, Hulk. Coming in at number 9, we have immunity to adamantium. Now, most comic fans will know that Wolverine had his skeleton entirely covered in adamantium, one of the most powerful metals on Earth by the Weapon X program. But did you know that adamantium is actually incredibly toxic? If it weren't for Wolverine's healing ability constantly fighting off the toxic effects of having this metal throughout his entire body, he likely would have died from the poisonous effects of the experiment decades ago. Anytime that Wolverine has temporarily lost or weakened his healing abilities since joining the X-Men, he's had to rely on antidote pills to ensure that his bloodstream isn't overrun by the toxic chemicals within the adamantium in his body. All of this is to say that while Wolverine's claws may be deadly, they easily could have wound up being just as deadly to him. Coming in at number 8, we have Wolverine's perfect night vision. As I mentioned earlier, Wolverine is well known for his more animalistic traits, such as his hearing and sense of smell, when it comes to being able to hunt down his enemies. But that doesn't mean his eyesight is weak by any means. Although it's more commonly known as an ability of his arch-rival Sabretooth, Wolverine has absolutely perfect night vision, meaning he can see better than most humans can during the day while it's pitch dark outside. Might just be a personal preference, but I really wouldn't want to encounter Wolverine in a dark room. Coming in at number 7, we have Wolverine's memory suppression. That's right, even though it's been a major story point throughout decades of X-Men comics, and particularly the live-action films, that Wolverine's got some amnesia issues, it turns out that this character trait is more of a superpower than just a traumatic backstory. While I'm not sure if the science quite works out on this, apparently all of the holes in Wolverine's backstory aren't the result of an enemy's memory wipe, but rather from Wolverine's healing ability building up scar tissue within the trauma center of Wolverine's brain. Without it, Wolverine's long lifespan and all of the horrors that he's endured over the years would be too much for even a mutant brain to handle, and thus, the amnesia is actually a safety feature from Wolverine's own mutation. Definitely an interesting take on his healing abilities, even if Wolverine probably wishes that his memory was a bit more stable than it has been in the past. Coming in at number 6, we've got another side effect of Wolverine's healing, and that's his relative immunity to telepaths and psychic attacks. All of that scar tissue building up in Wolverine's head over the decades isn't just for blocking out unpleasant memories. In fact, it was revealed that this is the reason that so many villains have had issues controlling Wolverine with telepathic powers in the past. Wolverine's healing ability actually forces out the mental forces attempting to break into his mind, thus letting Wolverine control his own destiny and always being sure that he's in charge of his own body. Coming in at number 5, we have nuclear survival. When Wolverine was first introduced in the comics, his healing ability was just a quirk that made him a more intimidating warrior. Any cuts or bruises would just quickly become a non-issue to him. But as time went on and Wolverine became a more popular character, his healing abilities as a mutant became one of his most defining features, even more so than his iconic claws. Wolverine's healing abilities combined with his indestructible skeleton have been shown to be so great over the years that he's even been able to withstand the full force of a nuclear bomb. Look, comics in the 90s were a little bit over the top, okay? Coming in at number 4, we have Wolverine's animal empathy, a power that was particularly useful during the period of time where Wolverine abandoned his humanity and lived in the woods. While not going so far as to allow him to literally talk to animals, Wolverine is still able to sense and understand the emotions of any animal in front of him, alongside allowing them to understand his emotions as well, getting rid of any danger of fear or miscommunication between him and the usually deadly species he encounters, such as wolves. With abilities such as these, it's not too hard to wonder if Wolverine sometimes can be more beast than man. Coming in at number 3, we have Wolverine's infamous hot claws. Following a period of 5 years where Wolverine was canonically dead within the Marvel Universe, asphyxiated by an adamantium prison, it wasn't long before Wolverine was brought back from the dead because, you know, comic books. Resurrected by the mutant Persephone, who aimed to use Wolverine as a puppet, Wolverine's healing abilities allowed him to break free of her control and found his newly resurrected form with a power upgrade. His adamantium claws could now seemingly reach unlimited amounts of heat energy, overflowing with power in Wolverine's new body. These claws made Wolverine's claw attacks somehow even deadlier than before, even if they carried the side effect of limiting the rest of Wolverine's healing abilities. And while they haven't been seen in recent years after becoming a bit of a meme on the internet, who knows if Wolverine will ever be needed to use his hot claws once more. Coming in at number 2, we have Wolverine's mastery of languages. While this probably doesn't count as an actual mutant ability of Wolverine's and is more due to his overall intelligence, Wolverine's healing ability and longevity over the years have definitely helped with the fact that canonically, Wolverine knows at least 18 different languages, the result of an incredibly hectic lifetime throughout the 20th century, and showing that Wolverine is anything but just a violent brute. While knowing Japanese might be expected given Wolverine's history in the region, he also knows everything from Spanish, Italian, Vietnamese, and Russian, just to name a few. Although, honestly, now I just really want to know what the Russian translation of bub is. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Wolverine's Berserker Rage. For the longest time, Wolverine was seen as a fighter with a temper, and someone you definitely didn't want to fight while he was pissed off. It's eventually been revealed, however, that Wolverine's rages are actually a part of his mutant power set, allowing him to go into a full Berserker mode if he ever feels too cornered in combat. While Wolverine has been shown to despise this aspect of his powers, and even seems embarrassed of his rages when they're used for good, sometimes the odds are so stacked against the X-Men that the only way out is for Wolverine to forget everything else and unleash the beast inside.
Number 10. Lost his nose. After Wolverine lost his adamantium from Magneto ripping it out of him, which was also a pretty terrible thing he suffered through, he also lost his nose along with it. It seemed that without the adamantium, Wolverine then reverted to an animalistic state, which has been on and off characterized as some part of his mutation, or alternatively, he gets it from his biological father. During the time he was without his adamantium as such, he also started to appear more animal-like, and as a result somehow lost his nose for some time in all the chaos of art that followed. Though thankfully Logan would eventually get his nose and his adamantium returned him once again. Number 9. Possessed by the Black Blade. The Black Blade was forged by a man named Muramasa himself, a legendary swordmaster who built the blade using a part of his soul. Known for being a madman, the fragment of his soul would live on and possess whosoever wielded it, making them also mad and in essence bloodthirsty. We saw this happen to Jessica Drew in the 1989 Wolverine series, and then saw Wolverine manage to save Jessica when he himself took the blade from her. He thought this would kill her, but instead the soul of Muramasa within the Black Blade merged with Wolverine's, seeing him as a kind of kindred spirit of sorts. Wolverine then found himself possessed, and during this time almost killed Jessica Drew and the Silver Samurai as a result. Fortunately, he managed to assert his own will and reject the Black Blade's influence in the end, but being possessed is of course never fun, although I don't think he would have been too beat up if he had ended up killing the Silver Samurai while possessed. Number 8. His wolf family getting murdered. Wolverine has more origins than I have fingers. One such origin tale for him allows us to see him living with wolves, retreating to the wilderness after suffering a great trauma. The pack he lives with has become his family, and he takes great pride in taking care of his family and their newest cubs. However, Wolverine's curiosity one day gets the better of him when he and his pack run into the White Bear, a mysterious and uncommon sight for them. Wolverine senses the bear is out of place and tries to help it by leaving it gifts of food. Unfortunately, he seems to be unable to help it, until the bear one day manages to follow the scent of Wolverine's pack, tracking them down and slaughtering them. Wolverine returns home to find his family killed and devoured by the bear. With a mix of emotion, Logan himself strikes out and kills the bear, falling himself but recovering after a short while. Poor Wolverine can't even have a wolf family in the comics without some tragedy coming along and ruining it. Number 7. Forgot who he was. The amount of times that Wolverine has had his memories blocked, altered, and experienced amnesia is numerous. If you go back to some of his early years in the comic, he even seems to be somewhat lost in terms of really knowing who he is or why he is the way he is. In Claremont's Wolverine run from 1989, Wolverine even seems to have very little idea of what his early life was like. At this point, he even seems to believe that his claws are completely made of adamantium, and that they were even implanted inside him and are not actually part of his mutant powers, but he doesn't seem to recall who implanted these claws or why. Later on, we learn that Weapon X was responsible for the adamantium that was fused and coating his skeleton, and that his claws underneath were actually made of bone. We'd also learn that these bone claws were part of his mutation, and not created in some lab like he'd originally believed. Due to the amount of times his brain has been tampered with and his unique healing factor, Wolverine on a regular basis seems to forget various things about his past. His mind is constantly foggy when it comes to what he has done and even sometimes who he is. Number 6. Entire family was murdered in the Old Man Logan story. Logan actually manages to settle down and start a family with a woman named Maureen in the Apocalypse. Together they have 2 children, Jade and Scotty, likely named after Logan's old friend and sometimes rival, Cyclops aka Scott Summers. Unfortunately, when Logan is forced to go on a mission to earn rent sooner and in a higher sum than expected by the Hulk gang, he returns on time, in fact earlier than that, only to find that the Hulk gang got bored and murdered his entire family anyways. His 2 kids and Maureen are all dead. Logan gets his revenge, of course. Tragically though, it does nothing to bring back that which he has lost. Number 5. Forced to kill Jean Grey. Multiple times too. Of course, Wolverine usually only kills Jeannie to spare her pain, but he also has a tendency to stab her and others that he cares for right through the gut, so not sure how much pain he's really sparing her there. In fact, I feel like, as someone who wields a sword, if you really want to hurt them, you usually stab them to the gut. Just saying. Wolverine has been asked to kill Jean multiple times. One time he was asked to kill her an innumerable amount of times all in one go, when she believed her deaths would weaken the Phoenix Force, and so asked Logan to kill her on repeat for goodness knows how long. Of course, as we've seen in the newest Wolverine series, when once again Logan kills Jean, this time not on purpose, it hurts Wolverine to have to do this. He doesn't like to hurt the ones he loves, yet he often feels as though this is a cycle that will never end, which is also why he tends to keep to himself more often than not, because he doesn't want to risk hurting those who get close to him. Aww. Number 4. Sent to Hell. The Red Right Hand and Mystique were the ones responsible for this plot. Mystique lured Wolverine into a ritualistic circle where his soul was then sent to hell. Wolverine's soul was not only tormented, but his body actually became the host for a demon, being known as Wolverine on Earth, an entity who sought to destroy everyone Logan had ever cared about. In Hell, Logan had to face the ghosts of his past. Mariko, who was herself in Hell, was even ordered and forced into torturing Logan. She ended up in Hell due to the fact that she was the head of the criminal Yoshida family. Yikes. Number 3. Forced to kill Daken. While Daken has definitely earned his father's ire, the truth is Wolverine has never wanted to kill his son. Not really. Despite the fact that Daken has attempted to kill and has effectively tortured Wolverine for years in the comics, Wolverine struggled to accept the fact that he had to end Daken's life when the time came. Later on, it was revealed that although it had been Wolverine's choice to kill Daken, drowning him in a puddle, which actually ended up being a much more emotional moment in the comics than it sounds, it had actually all been part of Sabretooth's plot to torment his nemesis, Wolverine. Sabretooth had manipulated Daken knowing that Wolverine would be forced to kill him. Number 2. Murdering his kids. If you think killing Daken was bad, keep in mind that it wasn't as bad as this next point. Wolverine was manipulated into facing and killing his own children by his own son Daken himself. Daken had been working with the Red Right Hand, an organization focused on destroying Wolverine's life due to their common hatred of the hero. Daken, working in collaboration, brought a team known as the Mongrels together, which was comprised of Wolverine's as yet unknown children. They would remain unknown too, as Wolverine was forced to kill them when the Mongrels attacked him and refused to stand down. It was only after they were all dead that it was revealed to him that the team was entirely made up of his own flesh and blood. His own kids! Shocked and traumatized at this discovery, Logan knew he could never make amends, but took it upon himself to at least give them a decent burial. Number 1. Manipulated into murdering all of the X-Men. In the alternate future belonging to the Old Man Logan universe of Earth 807128, Wolverine has seen and experienced some of the worst things ever. This alternate version of Logan no longer goes by the name Wolverine in that future. That's because he was the one responsible for murdering the entire X-Men team, and all the students residing at the X-Mansion. But it wasn't his fault. Wolverine at the time was manipulated into doing so by Mysterio, who created an illusion that made Wolverine see everyone in the mansion as a villain and an intruder. The illusion faded away only after Logan had killed everyone, with it being revealed that his last opponent, whom he thought was Bullseye, had really been one of his closest allies, Mutant Jubilee.